is Sarah, and I'm 24 years old. I moved into this rental cottage last autumn because I wanted some peace and quiet while I finished my graduate thesis. Honestly, I think I romanticized the idea of living alone in the woods a little too much, that whole solitary scholar in a cabin aesthetic. But the reality was just a lot of long hours in front of a laptop and struggling to keep my houseplants alive. It was a small A-frame place about 20 minutes outside of town. My landlord, a guy named Mr. Gable, was an older gentleman who mostly just wanted his rent check on time, and for me to promise not to mess with the heating system. The house was perfect for me. It was tucked away at the end of a winding gravel driveway, surrounded by these massive, ancient pine trees that practically blotted out the sky. I remember thinking that it was the kind of place where you could actually hear yourself think. I was wrong, but it took me a while to realize it. My first month was blissful. I'd wake up, make a pot of strong coffee, and spend my mornings working on my research papers. By mid-afternoon, I'd usually go for a quick walk along the creek, or maybe head into town to run errands or grab groceries. I was doing a lot of reading on late 19th century literature, so I was already spending most of my time inside my own head, and the silence of the woods really did help me focus. I was perfectly happy. I had my routine, I had my books, and I had my long-distance boyfriend, David, who I'd FaceTime every night once he got off his shift. Everything was normal. It started on a Tuesday, or at least that's when I noticed it. I was working late, trying to hit a deadline for a chapter draft. My bedroom is on the second floor, and it has this big, single-pane window that overlooks the backyard. It doesn't have curtains, just a wooden shutter, which I usually kept open because I loved the way the moonlight hit the floorboards. I was typing away, the blue light of my screen the only thing illuminating the room, when I felt that sensation you get when you know you're being watched. You know the feeling, the prickle on the back of your neck, the sudden urge to look over your shoulder. I didn't think much of it at first. I just assumed it was the wind moving the trees, or maybe a raccoon scuttling across the roof. I stood up, stretched my back, and glanced out the window. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw it. About 20 feet away, perched on a thick branch of the largest pine tree, was an owl. It was huge. I'm no ornithologist, but I knew it was something special, a great horned owl, maybe, but bigger than any I'd ever seen before. It was just sitting there, completely motionless, its head turned toward my window. I smiled to myself, thinking about how cool it was to have such a majestic creature hanging out in my yard. I even whispered a quick, "Hey there, buddy," before turning back to my work. I thought it was just a nice moment of connection with nature. I had no idea that it would become the centerpiece of my life for the next 6 weeks. The next night, it was back. Same time, same branch. This time, I didn't smile. I felt a little weird just because of how fixed its gaze was. It wasn't looking at the woods. It was looking right through the glass, right at me. I tried to ignore it, but I found myself turning my desk chair so that my back was to the window. I told myself I was being silly. It's an owl. It's a predator. It's probably just attracted to the light from my room. By the end of that week, the weirdness had set in. I started losing sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart hammering for no reason, and I'd know before I even looked that it was still there. And every time I looked out that window, it was there. It never moved. It never blinked. It just watched. I tried to talk to David about it on our nightly call, but he just laughed. "Sarah, you're living in the middle of a forest," he said, trying to be sweet. "Of course there are owls. Just close the shutter, babe. Problem solved." I took his advice. I closed the shutters that night, but that only made it worse. Now, instead of seeing it, I could hear it. It started at around 2:00 a.m., a sound that wasn't an owl hoot, but a low, rhythmic tapping against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. It was like someone was trying to get my attention, trying to communicate through the wood. I'd lie there, wrapped in my duvet, staring at the dark window, terrified. I wanted to move out, but I'd already signed the lease, and I didn't have the money to just up and leave. I told myself it would pass. Maybe it was a migratory thing. Maybe it would get bored and fly away. I started avoiding the bedroom. I'd sleep on the couch downstairs, but even then, I could hear it. The tapping would move. If I was in the living room, it would start on the glass door leading to the patio. If I went to the kitchen, it would start on the kitchen window. It was following me. It was like it knew exactly where I was at every moment. My grades started to slip. I was exhausted, anxious, and jumpy. I started skipping my morning walks because I was afraid of what I might find in the trees. One afternoon, I saw Mr. Gable coming by to check the well pump, and I nearly ran out the door to stop him. I wanted to ask him if there was something wrong with the property, if anyone else had complained about the bird. But when I opened my mouth, the words died in my throat. How do you tell a 70-year-old landlord that you're being harassed by an owl? He'd think I was having a mental breakdown. So I just said everything was fine. I lied right to his face while I was shaking. That night was the worst. I decided I was going to confront it. I was so sick of being afraid in my own home. I waited until 2:00 a.m., and when the tapping started, I didn't run. I stood up, walked over to the bedroom window, and grabbed the latch of the shutter. "Get out of here," I yelled, throwing the shutters open. I expected it to fly away. I expected the flutter of wings, the rush of air. But the owl didn't move. It was closer now, much closer. It was sitting on the windowsill. Its talons dug deep into the wood. When I looked into its eyes, I didn't see a bird. I saw something ancient, something cold. And then it opened its beak. It didn't make a hooting sound. It made a sound like a human voice, high and thin, distorted like a bad radio signal. It said my name. Sarah. I fell backward, hitting the floor hard. I scrambled into the hallway, slamming the bedroom door shut and locking it. I didn't stop until I reached the front door, and I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I drove into town, parked in a well-lit gas station, and sat there until the sun came up, crying until I couldn't breathe. I didn't go back to the cottage that day. I called my mom. I told her I was having an emergency, and she helped me pack up my things while I stayed in a hotel. I didn't tell her the truth about the owl. I just told her the isolation was too much for me, and I was having panic attacks. She was just relieved I was safe. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm back in the city now, living with a roommate, trying to get my life back on track. I'm almost finished with my thesis. I'm sleeping better. But sometimes, when the wind hits the window of my apartment just right, I get that feeling again. And then I hear it. Tap, tap, tap. I live on the 4th floor. There are no trees outside my window. There are no branches to land on, but I still hear the tapping. I haven't told many people this because I know they'll think I'm crazy. I think I'm crazy. But last night, I went to the grocery store, and when I walked back to my car, there was a single gray feather on my windshield. It was tucked perfectly under the wiper. I'm sharing this because I still don't fully understand what happened or why it's still following me. I thought that if I left the woods, if I went back to a crowded place, it would lose interest. But I don't think it's a bird anymore. I don't think it ever was. I keep the blinds closed now, all the time, even in the middle of the day. My roommate thinks it's a phase, that I'm just being weird. But I can't take the risk, because if I look out that window and I see those eyes, I don't think I'll be able to run away this time. I think I'll just be stuck. I think that's what it wants. I don't know who to talk to. I've looked up everything online, every local legend, every weird bird encounter, but nothing explains a bird that knows your name. Nothing explains a bird that can travel miles just to tap on a window. If you ever see an owl and you feel that deep, gut-wrenching feeling that it's watching you, not just looking at you, but studying you, don't look at it. Just walk away. Keep your head down. Close your blinds. Don't acknowledge it. I'm worried that by acknowledging it, by talking about it, I've only made it stronger. I can hear the tapping again, even as I'm recording this. It's getting louder. I think it's coming inside. My name is Sarah, and I think I've made a mistake. Please, just don't look back. Story 2. My name is Elias, and I'm 29, though I feel a hell of a lot older than that lately. I work as a night watch security guard at a private estate on the outskirts of town. It's a quiet job, and I usually spend the hours between midnight and 4 doing rounds or reading books in the security shed, just killing time until the sun comes up and the morning shift pulls in. Honestly, it's not a glamorous life. It's a lot of coffee, a lot of cold air, and a lot of staring at monitors that mostly show empty driveways and swaying trees. But I liked it. I liked the solitude. I'm not really a people person, you know. I've got my routine, I've got my podcasts, and I've got my cat back at the apartment who's usually waiting for me to get home and fill his bowl. Everything was predictable. Or at least, it was until about 3 weeks ago. The estate is huge, about 60 acres of wooded land bordering the old state forest. The owner, Mr. Henderson, is rarely here. He's some kind of tech investor who spends most of his time in Europe. So he pays for the security, mostly, to keep the local kids from spray painting the stone walls or trying to turn his pool into a party spot. My partner on the day shift, a guy named Marcus, is the one who usually handles the maintenance crew if they come by to trim the hedges or check the fence lines. We don't talk much, just hand off the keys and exchange a few words about the weather. It's a standard, boring, normal life. I remember that Tuesday night vividly because it was the first time in months that the radio had acted up. It was static, just a low, persistent buzz that made my teeth ache. I thought maybe it was just the humidity or maybe a loose wire in the shed, so I didn't think much of it. I finished my first perimeter check around 1:00 a.m. The air was crisp, that kind of early autumn chill that gets into your bones, and the gravel crunched under my boots just like it always did. Everything seemed perfectly fine. I walked the north fence, checked the gate locks, and looped back around the main house. The house itself is this sprawling glass and stone thing that looks more like a museum than a home. It's got these massive floor-to-ceiling windows, and from the outside, looking in, it always feels a bit like you're watching a movie set. I made my way back to the security shed, sat down, and pulled out the paperback I'd been reading. It was a thriller, one of those ones you can't put down. I got about 20 pages in before I heard it. It wasn't a standard owl sound. You know the sound, the soft, hooting, melodic thing you hear in cartoons or nature documentaries. This was guttural. It sounded like someone trying to mimic an owl, but getting the pitch completely wrong. It was heavy, like a wet cough trapped in a throat that wasn't built for sound. I looked up from my book, half expecting to see a bird perched on the roof of the shed. But the silence that followed was heavy. I waited. Nothing. I shrugged it off, assuming it was just a branch rubbing against the metal siding, or maybe a stray dog wandering in from the woods. I went back to my reading, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking at the window, checking the perimeter cameras. That's when I saw it. On the camera covering the eastern garden, there was a shape on the stone pedestal where Henderson usually keeps a decorative statue. It was just a silhouette, really darker than the shadows around it. I leaned in, squinting at the monitor. It was an owl, sure, but it was massive. It looked like a great horned owl, but something about the way it was sitting felt stiff, rigid. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a statue someone had moved. I grabbed my flashlight and decided to walk over, just to be sure. It felt silly, walking across a manicured lawn at 2:00 a.m. to check on a bird. But that's the job. You get paid to notice things. As I walked, the silence of the woods felt different. Usually, there's that hum of insects, the rustle of small animals. That night, nothing. It was like someone had hit the mute button on the entire world. My boots on the grass sounded like gunshots in the quiet. I reached the pedestal. The beam of my flashlight cut through the dark, and there it was. It was a great horned owl, all right, but its eyes, they weren't reflecting the light like they should have. When you shine a light on an animal's eyes at night, you get that glow, that tapetum lucidum reflection. This was different. The eyes were just black holes, deep and flat, absorbing the light completely. It didn't blink. It didn't puff its feathers. It just turned its head. I've seen owls turn their heads, but this was too far. The head rotated nearly 270 degrees, tracking me with an unnatural, fluid motion that didn't look like bone and muscle. It looked like a mechanical toy. Then it opened its beak. It didn't hoot. It made a sound like a human whispering. Elias, my blood went cold. I dropped the flashlight. The beam hit the grass, illuminating my own shaking boots. I stood there for a second, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack my chest open. Get a hold of yourself, I thought. You're tired. You've been working too many hours. It's a bird. Birds don't speak. I picked up the flashlight, my hand trembling, and pointed it back at the pedestal. It was gone. I scanned the trees, the bushes, the roof of the house. Nothing. Just the wind starting to pick up, rustling the leaves. I walked back to the shed, my mind racing. I told myself I must have fallen asleep at the desk. Maybe I'd had a vivid hallucination, some kind of stress-induced dream. I did that sometimes. I'd drift off for 5 minutes and wake up disoriented. That had to be it. I sat down at the desk, turned the volume up on my radio, anything to fill the silence, and tried to read again. But I couldn't. Every few seconds, I'd catch myself glancing at the monitor. At 3:15 a.m., the cameras flickered. It wasn't a power surge. The screens didn't go black, they just froze. All of them. The image of the driveway, the house, the fence line, it all locked onto a single frame. On every screen, the view was from a different angle, but they were all focused on the same thing, the security shed. And on the roof of the shed, I could see the silhouette of the owl. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was glued to that chair, staring at the screen, watching the dark, feathered shape perched right above my head. Then, the audio from the camera feed came on. It was supposed to be a one-way feed. I wasn't supposed to be able to hear anything outside, but through the static-filled speakers, I heard it again. That wet, guttural sound. And then, a voice, thin, raspy, and sounding exactly like my own voice. I wish I had listened. I bolted out of the chair, grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight like a club, and shoved the door open. I swung the light up to the roof. Nothing. I ran around the shed, checking the corners, looking up into the dark canopy of the trees. The wind had died down again. The estate was perfectly still. I started to wonder if I was losing it. Maybe a carbon monoxide leak. Maybe the stress was finally catching up to me. I went back inside, feeling shaky and foolish. I grabbed my phone to call Marcus, thinking maybe I'd tell him I was coming in early and he could cover the rest of the shift. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to see my cat. I wanted to be in a place where things made sense. As I picked up my phone, I saw a text from Marcus. It was sent at 3:20 a.m. Hey man, quick heads up. I won't be able to make it in at 6:00. Had a weird situation at home. My cat died last night. Just found him in the living room. I stared at the screen. My own cat. The one I was going to go home to. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone. I spent the next 2 hours in that shed with the lights on, staring at the door, waiting for the sun to rise. I didn't dare go outside. I didn't dare look at the cameras. I just sat there, listening to the wind and the creaking of the metal walls. When the sun finally started to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in these bruised shades of purple and orange, I felt a wave of relief so intense, I almost cried. I didn't wait for Marcus. I didn't wait for the keys to be handed off. I threw my bag together, locked the shed, and started walking toward my car. As I passed the old oak tree near the gate, I stopped. There, on a low-hanging branch, sat the owl. It was mid-morning now, full light. It didn't look like a shadow anymore. Its feathers were gray and brown, ragged and dusty. It looked like a normal, albeit very large, bird. But when I got closer, when I looked at its face, I saw those eyes. They weren't black holes anymore. They were mirrors. I could see myself in them. I could see how pale I looked, how bloodshot my eyes were. And in the reflection, I could see something standing right behind me. I spun around. There was nothing there, just the empty gravel road and the gate. When I looked back at the tree, the owl was gone. But something was hanging from the branch where it had been sitting. It was a small brass key. It looked old, tarnished, like something that had been buried in the dirt for years. It was dangling from a piece of twine. I'm not a superstitious man. I'm a rational, logical guy who works a boring, standard job. But when I reached out and took that key, I felt a weight in my hand that I can't explain. It felt heavy, like it was made of lead. I went home. I called out of work for 3 days. I couldn't face the estate, and honestly, I don't think I ever will again. But it's been 3 weeks, and the weirdness hasn't stopped. I keep finding things. I found a dead mouse on my doorstep yesterday, laid out perfectly straight. The day before that, my power cut out at 3:00 a.m. And when I went to the fuse box, I found a single gray feather taped to the breaker. I'm sitting here now, and I can hear it. Who? It's not in the woods. It's not in a tree. It's on the roof of my apartment building. I haven't told many people this because I know how it sounds. I know it sounds like I'm having a breakdown. But the thing is, I think that thing is trying to tell me something. Every time I see it, something else in my life changes. A friend stops calling. A door locks that used to stay open. A memory just disappears. I think it was a warning back at the estate. I think it was a warning that my life, my boring, quiet, predictable life, was over. I'm sharing this because I still don't understand what it wants or why it chose me. But tonight, I'm locking every window and pulling the curtains shut. I'm not turning on the lights. I'm just going to sit here and wait, because I know that if I look out that window one more time and I see those eyes looking back at me, I won't be looking at a bird. I'll be looking at the end of everything I know. I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried calling the police, but what do I tell them? There's an owl on my roof and it's stalking me. They'd put me in a facility before I finished the sentence. I tried to move, but I can't break my lease. And every time I pack a box, I find one of those feathers inside. It's like it knows. It's like it's already inside my head. My name is Elias, and I think I'm running out of time. I just wanted someone to know what happened before whatever happens next. If you see an owl, a real one, and it feels like it's looking right through you, don't look back. Just walk away. Don't ever look back.